So, willkommen zurück, weil ich werde aktuell wieder mal auf einen ukrainischen Legionär reagieren, wo er halt wirklich diesen ganzen Krieg miterlebt hat und auch den Krieg mitgesehen hat. Das ist mir halt wichtig, weil halt viele Geschichten dadurch da sind und viele kennen es halt, diese Geschichten nicht. Und er war halt schon seit 2014 da und kann wirklich seine Version aus der ukrainischen Seite, wo viele Leute nicht kennen zu dieser Zeit, weil viele haben halt die pro-russischen Seiten gezeigt gekriegt. Und das will ich euch genau gern zeigen und euch näher bringen. Genau. Dann werde ich mal ganz kurz meinen Trailer laufen lassen und dann geht's schon los.
Let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically.
So, dann switchen wir schon mal um. So. Heute geht es halt um einen ukrainischen Legionär. Wir werden uns das anschauen. Er hat halt seit 2014 gedient, erzählt seine Geschichte, was er erlebt hat, aus seiner Perspektive. Und es ist sehr interessant. Das kann uns mal auch ein bisschen einen Blick geben, auch im Ursprung dieses Konflikts. Und genau, ich werde mit euch auf die Fragen eingehen und mit euch darüber diskutieren, weil das auch, glaube ich, eine interessante Perspektive ist, wo viele nicht kennen. So. Und dann gehen wir mal los.
About 6 hours after that happened, my face was being played on RT News. We had enemy infantry less than 50 meters in front.
Ich muss sagen, ich habe schon 10 Minuten gesehen gehabt beim vorherigen Livestream. Das war aber nur dafür, weil er hat jetzt langsam ein bisschen eingeschlafen ist, weil ich vorher auf etwas anderes reagiert. Habe ich kurz einen Neustart gemacht, um das wirklich diese Geschichte zu verbreiten, weil das ist auch der Hauptfokus meines Livestreams. Weil diese Geschichte sollte gehört werden und auch verbreitet werden.
Front of us. We had enemy infantry less than 50 meters behind us. I spent the entire day with a pistol and a hand grenade in my hand, wondering which one I was going to commit suicide with. We've seen both landmines and ordnance placed in civilian areas to specifically target civilians. We're seeing ISIS-level tactics by the Russians at this point.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bravehearts on UATV. I'm your host, Corey. Today my guest, he is from the UK. He is a Ukrainian military veteran. His name is Chris, but he also goes by Swampy. What's up, man?
Hey, man. Thank you very much for having me back.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I haven't talked to you in a long time, so it's glad that you came back on.
Yeah, I think it's been a few months since we last saw each other now, so.
Yeah, it's been a while, and it seems like you're very busy these days with Prevail.
That's correct. Yeah, just it's just got so much on at the moment. It's
Yeah, one of my previous guests was Aiden, and we were talking a bit about Sean Pinner. And Sean and you are business partners now.
That's correct. So Sean came onto our NGO towards the end of 2024. So it's obviously Sean and myself used to work together in 2018 on the front line. So it's nice to be able to have him back in a different environment and just have him back in general as well, given his past.
Oh yeah, Sean, he has an incredible story. Out of all like the British people that inspire me the most, it's you, Aiden, and Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough to actually have sat down and chatted with all of you guys. So no, it's glad that you're back, Swampy. But for the people at home that don't know about your experience, let's start maybe from the beginning. Let's talk about Myanmar.
Okay.
You were in Myanmar. How did you end up there? And then we'll talk about how you came to Ukraine.
Yeah. Okay. So I ended up in Myanmar in the late 2000s. I had been paying attention to the situation that was going on there with the ethnic groups, which have been fighting probably the longest, well, it is the longest civil war on the planet. It's been going on roughly 80 years at this point. I can't remember the exact amount. And I ended up reaching out to some people that used to work there in the mid to late 80s. So I started going out just to see what I could do. A lot of it was helping to rebuild schools that had been
Na, aber ist irgendwas los?
burnt down, villages that had been burnt down, and then working just to teach basics to their armed forces that were fighting against the government. And it was a couple of years into different volunteering trips there that I started to become
Servus König, ich hoffe dir geht's gut.
actively involved in mine clearance. So I learned on the job in Myanmar with the help of a number of Western individuals. And then that carried on until the last big stint that I did in Myanmar was
Ja, hier ist alles in Deutsch, but you can talk in English too when you want. You can ask me, because I make a reaction of this Ukrainian legionnaire who was in the starting of 2014 in Ukraine, and he explained all his memories and his history in Ukraine, what happened and what you see. And this is just now we're on the background story. After that, we go for wider far.
was January through till August in 2014. But I'd already started paying attention to the protests in Maidan at that point. I had no inkling to come out to Ukraine, but I was paying an interest into what was going on because I didn't know anything about the country. And then when I came out of the jungle in August 2014, I had a pile of messages backed up from people I'd been chatting to from Kiev who had been part of the protests. And they were saying, hey, you know, we've got people going to the front line. They've got no medical experience. They've got no military experience. You know, guys are going out after like 3 days worth of training. Can you come and help? So I said, yeah, I'll come out. And the plan was to come out for 3 months and just see what I could do and help and assess. And yeah, between August 2014 and December 2018, I had a few months break in between, but yeah, it was a little bit longer than planned.
Okay. So you came to Ukraine in 2014,
Yeah.
and right away you got to work.
Yeah, so I came in, I can't remember if it was the end of August or start of September. Feels like
Servus. Klick, ja.
a long time ago, it was.
Sie leider, ich glaube, den ganzen Namen, irgendwie hat es alles verdeckt.
And I looked at the options of where I could go, where I could be most useful and beneficial. And within a couple of weeks, I had made connections to a unit that was joining on to the National Guard. So I joined on with them and was part of a small detachment of foreigners.
Haben aber gute Ausrüstung, muss man ihnen lassen, ja.
So we had, I think at the time we had maybe 7 or 8 foreigners. I mean, even in the 3.5, 4 years I was here at that point, the amount of foreigners within that unit that then turned into a regiment was only averaging 8 to 10 foreigners anyway. And yeah, so I ended up in a reconnaissance unit with them for a couple of years. And then a number of foreigners left. I transferred over to Scout Sniper Platoon. And then I met Sean in 2018. And then I worked with Sean for about 6 months before, at the end of 2018, I then stepped away for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're an OG in this whole Ukraine conflict since 2014. How has your role evolved, you know, just from 2014 to 2018?
So I came in wanting to help wherever I could. It didn't really matter if I would be going out providing medical supplies or helping with evacuations or rebuilding or anything. I didn't really mind what role I did. I wasn't against becoming a combatant either, but it wasn't what I was really looking for. I wanted to continue with the mine clearance. I wanted to, admittedly, by coming to Ukraine, I knew that by coming here, I would be learning a lot more about Soviet munitions.
Ja, Minenräumer sind natürlich ein sehr wichtiger Job. Auch nach dem Krieg wird das immer noch ein wichtiger Job sein in der Ukraine. Und diese Leute sind auch, wo viele Leben retten, also in jedem Kriegsgebiet und auch danach. Es ist halt einer von der schwierigsten und wichtigsten Jobs, um ein Land wirklich auch nach dem Boden des Krieges wieder fit zu machen, damit die Kinder auch irgendwo spielen können und nicht irgendwo Iran verlieren, weil sie irgendwas gefunden haben.
Soviet munitions.
Oder Erwachsene natürlich, aber einfach als bildlich dargestellt.
Are used worldwide by many different countries. So it was also, admittedly, a way for me to be able to level up on my knowledge and learn from, obviously, Ukraine being an ex-Soviet country, being able to learn from people who had served in the Soviet Union as combat engineers, as EOD technicians, That was the best hand knowledge I was ever going to be able to get. And over time, it's led me into a position where I've ended up becoming an instructor for the Army, for the National Guard, and now at a later date, more now, you know, we train different government agencies, the police, the emergency services. So it's really evolved from that. So it kind of went bomb disposal, fighting, with mine clearance in the middle of it. Even with a scout sniper platoon, I was still the mine clearance guy.
No.
But when it was time to put down the mine probe and pick up the rifle, that was what the job entailed. And it's fluctuated like that. So,
because you spent more time, you know, 2014 into 2018 than, you know, with this current full-scale invasion, because it's only been 3 years. You were 4 years. So what were your most memorable moments, you know, in...
Definitiv.
in the 2014, 2018?
Und auch heute noch in Jugoslawien. Also es gibt auch heute noch unsere in der Schweiz auch unsere Entminer. Die gehen ja regelmäßig darunter, um ganze Minen noch wegzuräumen aus dem Jugoslawien, aus den verschiedenen Kriegen, wo da entstanden sind. Also ja. Und das ist trotzdem ein wichtiger Job. Also ich sag dir ganz ehrlich, das sind genau die Jobs, wo halt wirklich sicherstellen, dass die Leute wieder ein normales Leben haben. Und selbst auch im Zweiten Weltkrieg. Man räumt heute noch teilweise Minen.
18 timeline.
do they have to be memorable, good or bad?
Whatever stuck with you. We'll put it that way.
I won't go too far into it because it's a whole another conversation. Yesterday was my 10th anniversary of the Battle of Shirokina, just outside of Mariupol, where we had quite an interesting couple of days. And
Wenn ich wirklich, sagen wir so, ein Ranking listen muss, wirklich die bedeutsamsten Jobs, wo wir wirklich was verändern und auch für den Frieden machen. Zuerst mal würde ich sagen, der Sanitäter, weil der Sanitäter viel Leben rettet, wo gerade verwundet ist. Dann würde ich sagen, den Entminer. Und nachher würde ich sagen, ja, vielleicht den Koch, dass er wirklich eine gute Mahlzeit auf den Tisch bringt. Aber es sind halt wirklich die Sachen, wo versuchen, Menschenleben zu retten. Es gibt auch Rettungssoldaten und so weiter, wo halt in der Nähe von der Frontgebiete Leute evakuieren, wo in den Trümmern sind und so weiter. Gehört auch dazu. Und vielleicht ist der Feind auch in der Nähe. Die müssen auch evakuiert werden. Und das ist halt... Es gibt sehr wichtige Jobs, wo halt wirklich auch im Krieg, egal wie unmenschlich es ist, Menschlichkeit ausüben.
my position was overrun, so I spent the entire day 10 years ago yesterday with a pistol and a hand grenade in my hand, wondering which one I was going to commit suicide with because I was stuck between the first and second line of pro-Russian infantry pushing back against the Ukrainian forces. Oh. So yesterday was a good day.
How did you get out of that?
Long story short, it took about 17 hours to get across less than 2 kilometers of the village. And I met 2 Ukrainian military police that had also got stuck between that second and first line. That thankfully, one of them spoke Russian as well. And with their help, we managed to strip off our chevrons, strip off a tape. I was carrying a Ukrainian police sniper rifle, which the pro-Russians didn't
Interessante Police Sniper Rifle, also das ist ein 50er Kaliber. Fettes Teil.
have. So I was literally having to cradle my rifle like this and a Ukrainian either side of me. We had enemy infantry less than 50 meters in front of us. We had enemy infantry less than 50 meters behind us in open ground. And I'd already had to strip off as much Western looking kit as I had. And we just walked with them. And it wasn't until years later we actually realized that it hadn't just been pro-Russian militia that were in that fighting as well. We had a lot of Chechens that were there that day. We also had Wagner there that day. We just didn't know. The only way I got around it was because I don't call it ginger, it's strawberry blonde or whatever it is, but my beard at the time was out here, so I kind of looked the part. But yeah, yesterday was my 10th birthday, so I'm quite happy about that.
Oh, I'm so apprehensive to say congratulations.
Thank you. You know, so.
But no, I'm glad
Ja, wenn man aus so einer Situation rauskommt, kannst du wirklich nochmal Geburtstag feiern.
you made it out, especially, you know, with the sniper. If they would have caught you, you know,
Aber es sind unglaubliche Geschichten, die mal anzuhören, ist sicher mal auch sehr spannend für euch, oder? Schreibt mal in die Kommentare.
being a foreign person, being Wagner, being, you know,
Yeah.
Chechen, and you have a sniper, this could have gone really bad for you, man.
I mean, less than a month before that was the day that the pro-Russians bombed Mariupol with Grad. And my team had been the first team on site to that area, and I was caught on video camera by a Ukrainian film crew. And all I did, I put my hand up, I said, get out my face, please. I didn't care about the film crew, but we were trying to deal with dead and injured on the ground. And about 6 hours after that happened, my face was being played on RT News. And a number of hours into that starting of these claims of Western NATO mercenaries.
Kleine Umfrage, findet sowas interessant? Weil ich will auch später ähnliche Fälle machen von Interviews von Veteranen von der Ukraine und auch Menschen, wo aus besetzten Gebieten sind, um das euch dann näher zu bringen, was die Menschen miterleben und was wir auch für Lektionen mitnehmen können.
CIA assets and all this nonsense. Someone in the comments on the RT News website said, oh no, that's not all, you know, people thought it was American, people thought it was South African, and someone just put in the comments, oh no, that's Chris Garrett from the Isle of Man. That was my life changed overnight. So the pro-Russians knew damn well who I was. If I'd have been caught on that day, I don't think about what would have happened, but I have a good idea what would have happened at that point. So yeah, happy to be here.
I remember talking about this with you last time.
Yeah.
But so you have a big social media presence, and this is one of the ways that it started to grow, right? People are like, who is this Chris Garrett guy? Yeah, this mercenary.
Yeah, I find the term mercenary a little bit strange. Mercenary generally would be someone that's here for money. I'm definitely not here for money. I mean, even at the time when I was working with that regiment, you know, we were paid the same amount as any basic soldier. So we received, I think it was $400 a month, and we weren't looking for money. It was them that pointed out, we cannot have you here just as volunteers. You have to be paid, you know, by our law. $400 a month.
Genau, also ganz ehrlich, sind das Söldner für $400 im Monat? Würdet ihr eure Arschtafel wegschießen lassen? Schreib's mir in die Kommentare.
You know,
Weil das würde mich wirklich interessieren, weil viele behaupten, das sind Söldner. Söldner verdienen teilweise 6.000 bis Minimum 7.000 für diesen Job. Und das hier, $400, ganz ehrlich, nah.
You know,
Das machst du rein aus Überzeugung und nicht aus finanziellen Vorteilen.
civilian trade, I work as a tree surgeon or I work as commercial fishing. I don't need a month to earn that kind of money, you know. So if I want to be mercenary, I'll go back home and do tree surgery. That is mercenary money to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That means you really believe in the Ukrainian cause, right? In order to do such dangerous work for a little pay.
Yeah. I mean, when I first came in, you know, the first days in 2014, you know, I knew nothing about Ukraine. But since then, you know, I've worked with Ukrainians for a long time.
Ich wusste auch 2014, muss ich ganz ehrlich sagen, auch nicht viel über die Ukraine, nur dass sie damals uns Schweizer rausgeschmissen haben aus der, ich glaube, Europameisterschaft war das.
Been invited into their families' birthdays and Christmases. You know, I've got a lot of good Ukrainian friends here. I've been very well looked after
Eben.
in this country by people that know nothing about me.
No. Nein. No. Niet.
You know, and they've been very gracious to just open their doors and just, you know, whether it's supporting you with a cup of coffee or whether it's pulling you in at Christmas and saying, here is all our food, you know, so, yeah.
No, I love the Ukrainian hospitality.
Yeah.
Yeah, my girlfriend, she is from a village, and so when we go visit her in the village, like everyone from the village, the cousins, everyone comes to the house just to, you know, have dinner with me and just show their hospitality.
Yeah.
They keep asking like if I want more food. I don't know, just the Ukrainian people are one of the reasons why I stayed. It's not the reason why I came, but it's the reason why I stayed.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about after 2018. So you were with the Ukrainian military in 2014 and 2018.
Yep.
Then you took a bit of a break, right?
Yeah, so the situation on the front line had very much changed by the end of 2018. You had very, very static lines. Ukraine was being forced into a very unfair ceasefire where Ukraine was holding to that ceasefire. You know, soldiers at this time on the Ukrainian side were being threatened with court-martial if they fired without authorization. You were not allowed to fire on the enemy unless you were fired upon. And time again, we would.
Also das ist auch ein Punkt. Also der ukrainische Soldat durfte nur schießen, wenn auf ihn geschossen wurde. Und auch wenn der andere, du siehst, dass der die Waffe auf dich richtet, du musst warten, bis er dich beschießt, bevor du ihn beschießen darfst.
See artillery attacks,
Auch scheiße, oder?
rocket attacks, sniper fire, against Ukrainian positions, and they would just have to sit there and suck it up. And the international community was pushing for this ceasefire. It was very one-sided. It wasn't fair on the Ukrainians, you know. But this, in the back of my mind and in my heart, I really hoped that, you know, there was going to be some political.
Drückt mal auch alle ein Herz für Leute, wo sich dafür einsetzen in den Chat, dass wir da ein bisschen pushen können, und auch stimmt gerne ab, dass wir noch diese Story noch ein bisschen weiter verbreiten können.
Changes. I was pretty
Da brauche ich euch.
burnt out at this point because I was working with the military, but as a foreigner, you know, it was slightly different at that time. So if I didn't feel the need to go and take a break, I didn't take a break. That was bad on my behalf for not doing that, because I burnt myself out in the end. So end of 2018, I decided to step away. I went back home. I was just straight back into civilian life, trying to, you know, come down a little bit from the combat and everything else. 19, 20, 21, I just spent working throughout the UK. I had then ended up in Sweden for about 6 months. At the end of 2021, I came home to the Isle of Man, January 2022. I've been home less than 2 weeks, and then it kicked off.
Well,
So
how did you feel when you saw that, you know, Russia, they actually invaded the whole country, not the whole country, but the majority of the eastern part of the country?
So I've been keeping in touch, obviously, with Aidan and Sean, mostly Sean, in general over those few years. But then that last week, that last build-up towards the actual invasion happening, I've been chatting to Sean a lot. And a lot of us didn't think it was going to happen. It wasn't the first time Russia had put troops to the border in large numbers. And it was just, you know, in the past, it'd just been a feint. So there was a lot of people questioning if it was actually going to.
Sorry, ich habe von Kaffee, right, 14, 22 wurde.
going to happen.
Es wurden auch regelmäßig Leute von der Westukraine erschossen, weil die Punkt ist, die Soldaten, wo dort waren, teilweise aus der Westukraine. Natürlich schießen sie dann vielleicht auch zurück. Und was wir es erzählt, sie durften nur schießen, wenn sie schon beschossen wurden. Vorher durften sie nicht schießen.
And I think it was the second to last night.
Ich habe es mit Abkommen durchgelesen. Es ist wirklich ziemlich schwer, das einzuhalten.
Before the invasion, I spoke to Sean, and you know, we could tell that the mood had changed in country. You know, it was quite possible it was going to happen. And when I woke up that morning of the invasion, I kind of knew the night before that I'm going to wake up and it's either going to happen or it's never going to.
Und auch Mariupol wurde teilweise beschossen, und es gab auch Artilleriebeschuss mit so Raketenwerfern, diese Schildkasse. Und wenn ihr die sieht, ganz ehrlich, normale Miliz, wo solche Sachen haben, und sie haben teilweise ganze Einheiten auch zerstört von der Ukraine.
Going to happen. And yeah, I woke up to it, not like Ukraine, but I woke up to it happening across social media. And within 48 hours, I'd made the decision to come back. So
Come back to Ukraine, huh?
yeah.
And so you rejoined the military, right?
No, so when I initially came back in, my unit was based out of Mariupol. I knew very well that Mariupol was probably going to get steamrolled over sooner or later, whether it took a week, whether it took 6 months, sooner or later, Mariupol was going to get steamed over. I didn't see the benefit as myself as one individual person going to Mariupol. I might have made individual changes to a small unit on the front line, but to the overall picture, that wouldn't have helped. So I came in, I brought a number of foreign nationals in that had reached out to me to look for a way into Ukraine. After Theresa May had made it public that they wouldn't prosecute anyone from the UK coming to support Ukraine, I stupidly went public on my social media and said, anyone wants to come to Ukraine, message me.
Well,
400 applications later, we were having to find people to help us to sort the applications out to bring people into country. We weren't helping them financially or anything, but it's just, hey, you need to go to that train station, turn up here, you need to speak to that military office. oh, you're someone that's coming in and only does medical, we'll put you in touch with these people. You know, you're only coming in to save cats and dogs, fine, we'll find someone, you know, whatever place people wanted to fit in, we tried to help support that. So we stayed in Lviv for a few weeks, and then eventually, once things had stabilized a little bit, I moved a volunteer team of combat medics and combat engineers and a couple of EOD techs to Kiev. And then we immediately started training any units that needed mine risk education or mine clearance training. And then we jumped on with the Ukrainian police to start doing the clearance outside of Kiev. So.
Okay, so I mean, you're an expert at EOD, I can imagine.
I'm not an expert, no. I'm a layman that seems to have got away with it quite well. I can definitely do more than I'm qualified for.
Wenn ihr sowas interessant findet, lasst gerne ein Like und ein Abo da. Genau, das ist halt eine sehr interessante Geschichte, besonders halt, dass er den Konflikt schon seit 2014 und er erzählt halt von seiner Sicht und seinen Berichten. Und es deckt sich auch mehr, was ich gehört habe, wo ich damals 2020 in der Ukraine war, wo ich mit vielen Leuten aus der Ukraine unterhalten habe. Ich war damals in Poltava und war auch damals ein bisschen nach Mariupol gefahren.
But Ukraine specific, I'd say I'm good at what I do. If you put me in a different war, if you took me to Syria or Afghanistan or somewhere, you know, that's not the environment that I've worked in. You know, but Ukraine.
Sorry, wurde ganz kurz unterbrochen. Genau, also wir haben hier noch, was ich doch genau, lasst gerne ein Like und ein Abo da. Es deckt sich auch mit der Story, wo ich damals gemacht habe. Ich habe auch damals 2020 in Mariupol und habe auch mit Leuten von dort geredet und alles. Und das ist halt sehr spannend. Es deckt sich auch wirklich mit der Geschichte, wo ich da miterlebt habe. Und auch was er deckt, das passt auch, was die Menschen dort erlebt haben.
I've spent a lot of time here, so I'm grateful for the fact that I'm grateful for the ability to be able to pass on my knowledge and experience just to save people's feet. That's all I care about in the long run. So,
Hey, can you tell me about what demining in Ukraine actually looks like on a daily basis?
From a military point of view, if we're looking at combat engineers on the front line, it is nothing but chaos. We're looking at the most complicated minefield in the world now. So north to south, you know, you have a continuous mine belt at this point because there's been so much fighting, and now, even though there is a little bit of movement on the front line, it's quite stabilized in a way where both sides have been able to embed mines in for protection. That is now mixed in with huge amounts of unexploded ordnance. It's mixed in with drone munitions that haven't exploded. It's mixed in with FPV drones that have been downed. It's mixed in with cluster munitions that have been fired from MLRS, like Grad and Oregon and Smersh. Mm-hmm. All this is now confined into like these strips up and down the country. From a military clearance aspect, nearly all the clearance going on at the moment is only to support movement of troops in that area. They're not really doing any main clearance of belts or anything like that. They don't have the ability to.
Yeah.
So.
You've probably come across all sorts of explosives, you know, with your job. Have you noticed any cruel or innovative ways Russians have been using mines on civilians or soldiers?
Yeah, I mean, if we take it, I'm not going to go prior to 22, but I mean, if we just take it from 22 and onwards, when the Russians pulled out of places like Bucha and Irpin and Hostomel, we supported the police doing clearance there.
Ein Herz für die Antonov. Das ist ein tragischer.
There was a couple of police killed retrieving the body of a civilian out of the back of a car, which had been booby-trapped with a tank mine. So that would be one example. In a civilian car with a civilian body. They didn't know who he was going to kill. It didn't matter. We've seen both landmines and ordnance placed in civilian areas to specifically target civilians, and as well as the military.
Das ist auch eine Schweinerei. Einfach einen toten Zivilisten nehmen und dort unten noch eine Granate reintun.
As well. And between then and now, we've just seen this constant uptick of, you know, whether it be IEDs that are being used, booby traps in civilian places, or maybe not civilian areas, places where the military are, but at the end of the day, you know, a booby trap, an IED, a mine, it doesn't care. You know, it's for a long time they've been classed as the perfect soldiers. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they just sit there. They do not care what they function on. You know, so it's quite complicated. And then just as recently as yesterday, there was Ukrainian police, Ukrainian government deminers killed down in Mykolaiv. Well, one deminer killed, I think 3 injured. And that was an IED that was placed by an individual, which was then initiated by a second person that was there. Initially, we thought it was a suicide bomb. Now it looks like there was a chicken switch attached. So this person has been obviously commanded by pro-Russian forces, FSB, whoever, to go and place this. But then as this person's approached with it, whoever the second person is has set that off.
Yeah.
So we're seeing ISIS level tactics by the Russians at this point.
Yeah, so it's just terrorism then.
Yeah, it is terrorism. It's sheer terrorism.
Yeah, on civilians.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's Mykolaiv, to Mykolaiv City, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Es gibt mehrere Berichte aus dieser Region, dass da schlimme Sachen passiert sind. Selbst in Deutschland auch was Ähnliches mal berichtet. Also wenn jetzt mehrere Leute davon unabhängig voneinander, wo sie sich mal kennen, berichten, dann muss das auch etwas bedeuten.
It's wild. So you've seen a lot, and what is something that you've seen that you wish more people would understand? You know, about the world. What is something you experienced that you wish more people would understand about what's going on in Ukraine right
Weil ich sage immer so, wenn nur einer was berichtet, das ist noch mit der Fragen. Aber wenn jetzt mehrere Leute von unabhängig, wo halt im gleichen Gebiet unterwegs waren, was berichten, dann hat das mit der Wahrheit zu tun. Weil das muss ja etwas dran sein.
now?
Where to pick, where to kind of thing. I mean, I think we kind of have to look at what's going on right now, obviously with the politics coming out of the West, especially with the US. I think people need to understand that, for a start, the most important people to make decisions on how any peace agreement happens in this country is Ukraine. That is the most important. The very idea that countries on the far side of the world have more importance in playing a peace role between Russia and Ukraine is wrong. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ukraine needs the support of the international community, but it's stuff that needs to be done fairly. You know, it's very easy for people in foreign countries to just say, Ukraine, you're never going to take all your land back. The reality is we know that they're never going to take the land back in the near future. 100%, I do agree with that. But that doesn't mean that you can instantly just lay down your arms and quit. You know, there's too much spilt blood for this. You know, we see on a weekly, sometimes almost daily basis, we have Ukrainian POWs being dragged out into fields and shot. We have Ukrainian civilians being tortured, murdered, raped. How can we in the West as a civilized society say that that's fine and normal? If it happened in any Western country, we'd be in the streets. Mm-hmm. So why should it be any different here? You know, people say, well, it's only Ukraine, the Ukrainian conflict, the Ukrainian war, it doesn't affect us. That's wrong. You know, 400 million people face food insecurity because of the war going on in the east of the country.
You're on the ground. You see the realities of the war. When you watch TV, you might see a different picture. What are the differences here that you think the media portrays how what's going on in Ukraine is different than the reality?
Admittedly, I don't watch TV. I haven't even owned a TV in probably 20 years. But certainly from social media. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people that I follow are obviously pro-Ukrainians, but because of the amount of time I've spent here, I have a lot of people that may have different opinions. Mm-hmm. And I see the nonsense that's being pumped out. You know, it's, you see people turning around saying that Ukraine is getting all these Western weapons and then they're shipping 50% of them to Mexico for the Mexican cartels. What utter nonsense. Have we seen any Abrams tanks getting around by the cartel? You know, the cartel throwing 155 millimeter artillery shells across the border into America.
Das ist ja auch natürlich, dass die Amerikaner, also was Donald Trump behauptet hat, dass halt Waffen von der Ukraine nach Mexiko gelangen ist. Es ist auch viel einfach schnell in die USA zu gehen, weil da kannst du diese Waffen teilweise kaufen, das besonders in Texas. Da kann man doch schnell solche Waffen beschaffen. Und besonders, ja, wir haben niemals große Panzer gesehen oder HIMARS-System oder Javelins und solche Sachen. Die waren nicht dort, also die müssten sonst schon länger dort sein.
Can't people believe this? because you have, and I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out, JD Vance, there's a name. You know, people like this just spout this utter nonsense across social media, and unfortunately people listen to it. And, you know, we live in that world now where people will just, that's where they get their information from. You know, I don't understand it. Like when I went to Myanmar, I spent 4 years messaging people that worked in Myanmar before I even turned up in country. Before I came to Ukraine, I spent, 6 months, 7 months talking to Ukrainians before I even come to that country. You know, don't make an opinion on somewhere until you actually speak to the people that live there and live and breathe it.
Yeah. No, I feel that if you want to understand what's going on in Ukraine, you have to, talk to the people, of course, but you also have to come to Ukraine.
Yeah.
See it with your own eyes. Because if you're just going to believe what's on the TV, then you might get like the wrong idea on what's going on here. But
Can you understand it? But the point is, this argument roots normally, okay, when the Ukrainian supplies armor to the side of Mexico, example, why you send the army first, as the weapons to Ukraine, and then you sell this back to Mexico? It's too far. It's easier to go to US and send the weapons there, also take the weapons from there, because you find people who are cooperated with enough money. Everything is possible.
Let's talk about the people that do come to Ukraine. So you train mostly foreign people, correct?
No, so we have been doing training in the past for different military units that obviously have.
Kriegt 400 Euro für seinen Job. Hast du das Gefühl, das ist ein Söldner? Das ist ein Freiwilliger am Ende des Tages. 400 Euro, willst du deinen Arsch wegschießen lassen?
Foreign nationals that are now under contract with the Ukrainian military. So we will not train anyone that is not under a military. If someone says, hey, we want to learn military mind clearance, we will not train people that are not under a contract with the military. They have to be under contract. We have to get official request letters from their battalion or regiment to train them. We have moved away a lot of that, where we mostly are training Ukrainian demining agencies, government agencies, so the police, DSNS, SES, CISU, and organizations like this, because ultimately there is only so much you can actually train the military to do demining now. And this is because the mine threat is huge on the front line. I can't explain how big that threat is. But the rise in FPVs has changed the way that people can clear. So we are constantly evaluating and consulting with partners across the country to figure out what's the best training that we can actually give. We would also like to try and get accredited to do humanitarian mine clearance in country alongside our partners. We have one main partner for Invictus Global at the moment that we are actively looking to do humanitarian mine clearance with. The issue that we face is to go through the Ukrainian demining accreditation, you need $100,000 because you have to have your staff in place, your equipment in place before you can take that accreditation process. We're not Halo Trust, we're not FSD or any of the other big organizations. Sadly, we don't have big wallets. We've got the drive to do it, but we don't have the money to back it. That's the thing holding us back right now, which means we either sit around and do nothing while we raise the money, or we keep busy and try and save some lives and save some legs while we can.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Prevail for a second.
Okay.
So this is your organization, and you just brought on Sean, right, as your business partner.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you founded Prevail? What do you guys do? And just
sure,
everything.
I can talk about it now. I wasn't talking about it at the time. So from August 2022, I was working on the front line as a volunteer with the National Guard doing route clearance. And then at the end in December 2014, I was approached by GER, Ukrainian Military Intelligence, to come on to come under contract with the Ukrainian military. I signed a contract with GER in December, and then I took on the job of building them a combat engineer and an EOD team. So a normal contract would be 6 months, but they hadn't imposed that regulation at that point, which was thankful, because at the start of 2023, I met my partner who was working for another organization. She was working, doing medical evacuations of wounded soldiers and civilians from the front line, mostly in Bakhmut and Soledar. We met at the start of the year. Sadly, her work partner was killed. Pete Reed was my partner's work partner. So Pete was killed.
You knew him quite well, right?
Und die Sanitäter machen natürlich eine sehr wichtige Aufgabe. Dafür mal bitte alle ein Herz in den Chat.
I knew Pete for about 3 weeks, but Courtney, my partner, knew him very well.
Because it was his death anniversary not too long ago, right? I remember you made a post about it. And I see his photo every time I go to Maidan, and I see kind of the foreign military flags.
So Pete passed away. My partner escorted Pete's wife with Pete's remains back to America. And then about a week later, I got a phone call saying, hey, I'm pregnant. So it seemed like the right time to step away from frontline work. You know, at that point, I'd run the gauntlet and rolled that dice so many times and got away with it.
What is the closest call you ever had?
I don't know which one is closer, you know. I mean, I've got through this entire conflict and war with barely a scratch. Mentally, yeah, that's paid, you know, I've struggled with that. You know, I definitely feel a lot older for being here. I say there's definitely some mental things that from time to time I have to deal with. But we've had some pretty close calls, whether it being over Iran, whether it being in a trench position and going, I'm just going to go around the next corner to the next trench position and I'll have a cigarette now. And then the next position gets blown up, you know, or you're in a house and the next house gets blown up, or I don't know, you know, just name one, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of the volunteers that have come in since 2022, foreigners, you know, I know guys that are on like their 3rd or 4th or 5th injury now. And I'm not religious, but bless these people, you know, these people have hearts of gold. I've just been lucky and I'm very, very grateful that I've managed to get away with not being severely injured in this country. Yeah.
So let's go on to Prevail and what you're doing right now, and you know the difficulties you're having, you know, maybe fundraising and all of this, and how people can help.
Auch mal interessant, diese ganze Geschichte von seiner militärischen Karriere zu sehen. Kann man sicher so 2 Sachen mitnehmen. Also wenn ihr irgendwo ein Gebiet mal befreien sollt oder der mal in die Offensive sollte gehen, passt auf, dass die anderen dort keine Hinterlassenschaften lassen, wie zum Beispiel ein paar schöne Grüße.
Sure. So I say, I met my partner.
Und das habe ich schon mehrmals gehört, auch schon vor 2021, bevor der voller Invasion. Das gab es genug.
In country, when we found out we were having the baby, I stepped away from my contract in Go and handed over. And my partner and I, we very quickly realized that both of us were still not done with Ukraine. So we spent most of 2023, I came back into country a couple of times to conduct some training, but we spent the time building up our organization. Prevail is set up to do 2 simple things. We provide landmine clearance and landmine clearance training, mine risk education, to, let's say, Ukrainian partners, Ukrainian government organizations, agencies. And from a medical point of view, we provide medical support to both the civilian and the civilian and the military. We do the medical side across country. So at the moment, we do have one of our ambulances is in the east, providing medical care at the moment. We do have a second ambulance, but unfortunately, due to funding, we can't even afford the equipment to get the ambulance like up and running and going. We have the medical supplies. We don't have the equipment that we need. Because we built the organization in 2023, from an NGO stance, we came in late because most people that wanted to throw money into NGOs, that happened in 22 when there was this mad rush to help Ukraine. So what happened in 23 was quite comical in a way, because I started pushing Prevail out across my social media, trying to use my social media base to build up Prevail's social media so that I could take my social media and try and limit it and close it a bit. So I set up all the Prevail social medias and I started pushing these, and immediately got almost attacked online by people saying, well, who are you? We don't know who you are. You know, you've only been established. You know, what do you know about Ukraine? Well, actually, frankly, a lot. If you go to the website and look at the board of directors, you might learn something. But I can't force people to go to the website and look at the board of directors. So there we go. We've struggled on through
Und auch Respekt, dass sie auch solche Leute auch sowas wieder aufbauen und Krankenwagen und so weiter, die Menschen einfach helfen in der Region.
In
Und da soll ein Söldner sein.
24, last year.
Ein Söldner definiert sich mich, dass er ein erheblicher finanzieller Vorteil aus dieser Sache sind. Das ist für mich ein Freiwilliger, wo er halt hilft und auch ready ist zum Kämpfen.
Yeah, we did pretty
Weil es muss halt sein.
well. We assisted either in stabilization points or doing like patient evacuations. The rough figure of that is about 550 people with the rotation of medical teams that we had coming through. Actually training people, have been really bad to keep a log of how many people we train. We're probably looking at somewhere just over 1,000 people that we trained for mine risk education or mine clearance through different agencies last year. We don't bring in too much equipment. We don't really have the time to be providing and supporting equipment, and we have very little support of humanitarian supplies and things coming in. So instead of doing 101 different things badly, like we prefer, okay, we do medical, we do landmines. That's where we live.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You ever gotten any good feedback? You know, somebody that you trained, they went out, did their job, and they came back and said, you know, Chris, thank you so much. You saved my life because of my training.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to blow our own trumpet. I don't want to blow my own trumpet. But we work, we have repeat offenders that come to us for training. We assist them with a lot of training. There's units where we've been supporting training since 23. I've known some of these guys since 2015, 2016. These guys have gone through the mill, you know, and they are now the instructors for their units, you know, and a lot of these people have come back and said, you know, we are.
Danke für das Herz und danke für die Unterstützung für die Ukraine. Und ich muss sagen, diese Männer und auch Frauen, wo sich dafür einsetzen, haben riesen Respekt verdient. Dafür bitte nochmal ein ganzes Herz. Ja. Und wenn ihr mal nachschaut für die Person hier, schaut, dass ihr vielleicht auch was hinterlässt, weil ja, ich denke, Entminen ist etwas sehr Wichtiges.
Really grateful for the training that we give. And
deswegen ist mir auch wichtig, dass ich in die Ukraine gehe und dann euch diese Geschichten so nah wie möglich bringe. Ich würde es auch ähnlich machen, Interviews. Aber ich würde halt Leute suchen, wo halt wirklich in der Front oder im besetzten Gebiet ihre Geschichten erzählen können. Wo halt natürlich jetzt auf der ukrainischen Seite sind, weil ich muss halt mich auf eine Seite der Karte bewegen und ich würde mich auf der ukrainischen Seite bewegen.
You know,
ist auch ein bisschen sicherer, sagen wir so, ganz ehrlich.
They will catch us out as well. If we say something that is maybe not applicable to what's going on, or, you know, I might be in the middle of explaining something and I have one of those days and I forget something. We're all human, you know, or I say something wrong. They'll be the first to call me out on it.
Was meinst du? Nein? Das würde mich interessieren.
And I love it.
Da was in den Chat reingekommen. Also ich muss mal vielleicht ganz kurz gucken.
We have that kind of relationship. The other thing we're seeing as well, and it pains me to say it, there's obviously a lot of Ukrainians going out of country to receive training by international partners. It's becoming apparent that certainly within the realms of mine clearance, mine warfare, the training that is being provided in certain places may not be up to the standard that is required for this country, because Ukraine is its own different animal. Ukraine is not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Syria, it's not Libya, it's not any other country on the planet. This is a very specific war right here, right now. And with the rise of specific technology, it's becoming very complicated. Like my job, I spend half my time in a week keeping up with what's going on the front line because it's evolved.
Das deckt sich auch mit den Berichten, was Wagner noch teilweise, nicht Wagner, Azov, dass sie sagen, sie lieben ihre Leute im eigenen Land trainieren, weil es halt besser zu der Umgebung und diesem Krieg passt, weil eine NATO-Ausbildung natürlich halt für andere Kriege ausgelegt ist. Und das merkt man halt schon und da deckt es auch wieder auf seine Seite.
Evolving that rapidly.
And if people want to help you or support you, you know, people that are watching this, how can they do that?
If anyone would like to support us, please visit us at our website, prevailtogether.org. You can find me on you can find Prevail on social media. You can find me on my personal Instagram, Bring Me the Swampy. yeah, I mean, if you'd like to support what we do, it would be a huge help to us. All we care about is just saving lives and legs. That's all we care about. If you reach out to us and you want to aid other organizations because maybe you want to send dog food and you don't know where to send it, just reach out and contact us and we'll put you in the right position. You know, anyone that wants to help Ukraine, we're all ears. So.
And like you were saying, you know, funding is drying up,
Yeah.
Especially, you know, this late in the war. And also it's getting a lot worse with, you know, USAID, for example, you know, stopping the funding of different organizations here in Ukraine. Have you been affected by any of these freezes in funding?
So, no, we haven't, for the simple fact that we have zero government support, we have zero institutional support. All our funding is 99% coming from social media. And
Und wenn ich auch Interviews mache, ich werde sie immer ungeschnitten lassen, damit die Geschichte so natürlich wie möglich rüberkommt.
we're struggling to even find the $2,000 a month that we need to keep afloat as an organization. It's a question that I'm getting asked a lot at the moment. Now, we have, as I say, we don't get anything from USAID or anything. And I don't really know many organizations in my sphere that do. But obviously,
Was mache ich beruflich? Also ich war früher eine Bar gehabt, die habe ich jetzt geschlossen, früher in Wien. Und davor war ich auch viel militärisch unterwegs. Habe meine ursprüngliche Ausbildung 2015 gemacht in der Schweizer Armee, die Grundausbildung. Ist mittlerweile auch schon 10 Jahre her. Und dann habe ich halt bei 5 Jahren im Unteroffiziersverein, habe noch Weiterbildungen gemacht, gehabt diverse Kurse in Polen, in Frankreich und habe mir aber viele Veteranen ausgetauscht, war auch zweimal in der Ukraine, halt 2020, halt noch vor dem Krieg, also vor der Invasion, um auch mal ein bisschen ein Bild machen von dieser Lage, weil ich wollte mal wissen, wie die Menschen diesen Konflikt wahrnehmen in der Region und habe da einiges Interessantes erfahren. Ich war dort insgesamt 4 Wochen in der Ukraine und habe ja, eine sehr tiefe Geschichte. Und was mir jetzt am Herzen liegt, ist auch diese Geschichten nachher später, genau wie er jetzt hier interviewt wird, auch später an euch weiterzubringen, sobald der Kanal genug abwirft. Dann werde ich dir wieder in die Ukraine reisen und regelmäßig Interviews machen mit Leuten von der Ukraine selbst, wie sie den Krieg wahrnehmen, wo vielleicht auch aus besetzten Gebieten kommen, damit man halt ein komplettes Bild hat, wie die Geschichten dieser einzelnen Menschen sind.
the stopping of things like USAID is having an impact on Ukraine, as well as a number of other countries. On one hand, I totally understand it. You know, there is money that's, I have nothing to do with the US government.
Aber so, genau, wo ich wollte die Armee langsam verlassen, moralisch, genau, dann hat sie mich wieder eingenommen gehabt, besonders mit der Vollinvasion in der Ukraine.
And, you know, there's obviously money that's gone to places which maybe it shouldn't have gone to. And I totally understand there being the need to make sure that money is being correctly spent and put in the right places. But seeing money getting stopped for specific tasks like mine clearance or, you know, whether it be feeding children in starving nations, it's very sad to see that, you know. It's really concerning what is going on globally at the moment. So.
Because the U.S., they're freezing aid, not just to Ukraine, but to a lot of places while they investigate what's going on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I want to ask you, do you think Ukraine is able to achieve victory without U.S. support?
I believe that they can. I don't want that to be the case. I want the U.S. to continue supporting Ukraine in the right way. I understand that the U.S. has other things that they need to look at. The southern border, 100%, fix it. Homeless problems, fix it. Veterans Affairs, fix it. But a lot of the aid that comes into Ukraine from the U.S., there's all these claims of, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars of money coming here. I think some people have in their mind that the C-130 planes flying around Kiev and people are just chucking out duffel bags of cash. You know, a lot of people need to remember that a lot of this money stays in the U.S. It's pumping up economic growth in the U.S. through defense tech, through military industrial complex. You know, it's not like someone's turning up with duffel bags of cash and throwing it in front of his Zelensky and going.
Und das ist natürlich auch so, das sind halt einfach ganze Systeme, wo die Ukraine kriegen und nicht einfach Geldbeutel.
There you go, win the war. So people saying, stop sending aid to Ukraine because we need it to fight wildfires. I've never seen a wildfire fought with an Abrams tank or a howitzer, but I'm all open. I'd love to see it happen. By all means, prove
Ja, vielleicht gibt es ich glaube, es gibt Wasserbomben oder sowas, oder?
me wrong. I want to see the US continue to support. However, if the US does not continue to support, ultimately, the US is a long way away from Ukraine. This is a European issue. This is a NATO issue. You know, the biggest threat that can happen by a destabilized Ukraine is to the Baltic states, is to the NATO EU countries. And they know this. And I think at the end of the day, if the US pulls out all its support or continues this, what is going on now, which I see as just ramblings of, we're pro-Ukraine, we're not pro-Ukraine. Make your mind up, because, you know, I'm not a specialist in these matters, but I imagine behind closed doors in the EU right now, there are some very serious questions about, can we ever trust the US at this point? And it would make perfect sense if those are the questions going on right now.
Yeah, and you know, with these talks of negotiations, they're talking about you know, freezing the area of conflict. So basically, that part would be under Russian control. Ukraine would not get any NATO accession or guarantees or protection guarantees. How do you feel about? You work with a lot of Ukrainian people, military. How do you think Ukrainian people will react
Ja, ich musste es auch ein bisschen hochdrehen, aber der Punkt ist, mein Mikrofon gibt nicht mehr her. Mache ich dann später was anderes. Aber aktuell geht das noch nicht.
to this kind of agreements?
I don't think, you know, if Ukraine is forced under terms that are bad, like really bad for Ukraine, you know, if Ukraine's not given good, ample chance to fight its corner here about what ground it gives up, you know, if this is going to be the case, there's going to be a lot of resentment. And that resentment will probably get forced in two ways. It's going to get forced against the US, and it's going to get forced against the Ukrainian government as well. And I don't think that is fair. So, you know, the very fact that right now there is communications going on between Washington and between Putin, just saying, that's fine. Yeah, we can just chop it off here and you can just have that. He's an internationally wanted war criminal by the ICC. Why are they having this level of conversation? I do not understand this. I cannot fathom this. So right now, certainly for a few of my Ukrainian friends, they're not happy about what's going on. And I imagine that sentiment is across the country. You know, Ukraine has to have fairness in these talks. It has to be at the top of these talks. The people needing to have these talks, unfortunately, is Putin and Zelensky across the table. And okay, Russia's probably the biggest nuclear country on the planet. So yes, let's have the second biggest nuclear country on the planet in those talks to help mediate. But the conversation that needs to be had is between Ukraine and Russia. Anyone else, it is their privilege to be at that conversation. That's my view.
Are you optimistic about the future of Ukraine?
You know Ukrainians. You ain't putting a boot on the Ukrainians for that long. You know, this is a very proud country. And
wer denkt, dass die Ukraine einfach die Waffen in die Höhe hält, sobald das vorbei ist? Also sobald jemand von außen sagt, ja, bitte jetzt gebt endlich mal auf. Wer denkt das? Also ich denke das nicht.
I'm optimistic that Ukraine will do whatever is necessary to make sure that they survive and thrive as a country.
Very well said. I know Ukrainians, and I know they'll never give up. Very courageous people, and I just really hope that they get all the land back, and you know, Russia gets pushed back to, you know, their borders.
Yeah.
I really wish that. But Chris, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And once again, it's Prevail Together, or
the organization is Prevail. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the web domain, so it's prevailtogether.org.
Okay, yeah, because I saw like two different names. Thanks so much, Chris, for joining us on Bravehearts. If you all want to support Chris with Prevail, feel free to go to prevail.
Ja, anscheinend interessieren Leute sich nicht so für persönliche Geschichten, aber ich finde, diese Geschichten sollen trotzdem verbreitet werden, weil am Ende des Tages sind das genau die Geschichten, wo ein besseres Bild von dieser ganzen Sache erklärt. Genau normale Menschen, das sind die, die es erleben. Der Rest ist am Ende von beiden Seiten eine Art Propaganda und zum Zeigen, ja, es ist so gewesen, es war so. Der Punkt ist, jede Geschichte ist anders, jeder hat es anders erlebt teilweise und andere Erlebnisse gemacht, aber wenn sich mehrere Geschichten überschneiden von verschiedenen Leuten, wo sie das erlebt haben, wo halt in eine gewisse Region unterwegs waren, dann zeigt das genau, dass da was dran ist. Und das habe ich ja schon mehrmals gehört gehabt, dass die Russen wirklich Leute als Booby Traps, also einfach halt Fallen draus gemacht haben und dann einzelne Verletzte gab es daraus. Ja, einfach weil man eine Leiche einfach als so Sachen macht. Und es gibt es auch mehrmals. Ich habe es auch gehört gehabt, teilweise die Russen sich natürlich zurückziehen, lassen sich ein Magazin und tun unten dran Handgranate. Gut, das wird halt gemacht und ja, das ist halt brutal.
Prevailtogether.org.
Failtogether.org.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Braveheart.
Und da ist ja noch mehr passiert in der Region.
It's on UATV. Stay safe out there, and until next time, do побачення.
So, definitiv. Wenn ihr bis zum Schluss geblieben seid, dann lasst noch gerne ein Like und ein Abo da. Und ja, das ist auch genau mein Ziel, solche Geschichten weiter euch zu verbreiten und euch zu erzählen. Ich habe, sobald haben wir so jetzt die Monetarisierung erreicht ist für die kleine Monetarisierung, dann werde ich wahrscheinlich das erste Interview machen und werde euch das nahebringen und mal die Geschichte von einer guten Freundin von mir erzählen, weil sie ist ursprünglich aus Mariupol, bis sie 17 war. Also sie hat es noch, glaube ganz kurz vor dem Konflikt war sie halt weg. Aber sie hat halt genug Bekannte und Leute, wo aus der Region sind und halt diese Geschichte auch erzählen kann. Und wir werden auch noch weiter wahrscheinlich Interviews machen mit Leuten besonders aus Mariupol, weil Mariupol ist eine sehr interessante Geschichte und hat einiges mit diesen Geschichten zu tun, was wirklich aus der ukrainischen Sicht passiert sind. Und ich würde auch gucken, vielleicht, dass ich auch Leute von Donetsk erwische und solche Sachen. Aber das wird noch eine Zeit lang dauern, weil ich muss zuerst in der Ukraine sein und die Kontakte dafür aufbauen. Aber das werde ich sicher auch in Zukunft machen, weil es mir wichtig ist, euch diese Geschichten so nah wie möglich es geht. Und ich kann das in der Ukraine machen, will das gleiche machen in Russland. Wird es nicht so gut aussehen. Also lasse ich mal die Ukraine reden. Die dürfen sagen, was sie wollen und was sie denken. So, dann lasse ich euch mal und ja, ich mache jetzt mal kurz Mittagspause und dann, sobald ich wieder ready bin, komme ich wieder online. Da können wir wieder